Have you ever noticed that while doing an elemental attack, your black mage may sometimes do massive damage, but at other times do only a fraction, even though the enemy may be weak to that element? That's because your magical attacks miss, just like your physical attacks do. But with magic attacks, they will always do some damage, even when they miss. Now that we have access to the wide open sea, it might seem a little daunting at first, but we really have only opened up 2 more locations, the Melmond area on the west side of the map, and then Crescent Lake on the east side of the map. The northern continents are not yet accessible. I do like to sneak over to Crescent Lake to pick up a buckler for the thief, but nothing there will trigger until we take care of Melmond, as far as the story goes. In ages past, the town of Melmond was known as a seat of learning, a city of peaceful traders and peaceful gardens on the western border of civilization. But when the earth began to rot, Melmond suffered greatly. The rich soil underfoot turned to clay, and the plants died. Here is what the town of Melmond has to offer now. As far as the item shop goes, there is no item shop, so hopefully you stocked up before you got here. There's nothing here that's better as far as the weapons go than what we already have found in the Mystic Key locations, and that's mostly true for the armor shop as well, except for the steel armor, which is not a steel by any means, but it is a beefy armor for your fighter. The best armor that you can buy, in fact. And then there's the silver bracelet. We already picked up one of those from the Mystic Key treasure chests, but since we have another mage and a thief in the party, and our thief Miko still has the same wooden armor from our very first town we visited, 2 more silver bracelets will do us good. As far as the black and white shops go, for the white mage, Cure 3 is a powerful single cure, but Heal 2 is bugged in your favor. If you use Heal 2 in battle, it is significantly better than if you were to use it outside of battle, and it affects the entire party. So I like to pick that up, along with Life, which will revive 1 fallen warrior, but not in battle. And be careful, because if you use it in battle, it will waste a mana point, but will not bring the character back to life. Only use Life outside of battle. Then I pick up Harm 3, which does even greater damage to all undead on screen. For the black abilities, there's Fire 3, an even more powerful fire damage against all opponents, Bane, which is a poison-based KO, and that's important to note that it's poison-based, because it will not work if an enemy is resistant to the poison element. And then Warp, which is our first ability that cannot be used by our black mage. We have to upgrade to a black wizard and then come back here in order to purchase and use Warp. And then finally Slow 2, which, like Slow, reduces enemy hits to 1 or reverses the effects of Fast. It only targets 1 enemy rather than all enemies, but it is more accurate than its predecessor. And remember, other than the steel armor, if it's a weapon or armor that you can buy, the ninja can equip it. We will take a trip to the inn from our long voyage at sea, and then see what information we can glean from the locals. So we don't have an item shop, nor do we have a clinic at this town. If we have to raise anyone, we're going to have to go to Canaria or Elfland or even Crescent Lake. This is an agricultural town. Now there's someone to take note of, Sarda, called Sada in future versions of the game. It's significant that this is an agricultural town because it depends on the earth, and around here the earth is rotting. We'll note Titan's Tunnel to get to Sarda. Jim is a little side character. Another mention to the floater. the northern continents that we can't access yet, but that is a reused plot point in a lot of Final Fantasies, an ancient civilization with advanced technology that has since fallen into ruin in one way or another. We'll make a note of that. And here's a name that we're going to take note of for later. None of these tombstones say anything special. We'll make a note of the location of the Earth Cave. And the vampire is in that cave. So that's where we're headed next. Now, if you notice by the look of the map we looked at, that peninsula that we're headed for is in the shape of a mythological devil's tail. Here are two new enemies that we will encounter, along with some familiar faces from our last video. Now, in the original Japanese text, that peninsula was referred to as a devil's tail, but when it came to America, that was taken out. It has since been restored in the remakes. We're taking a little detour on the way to the Earth Cave. This is Titan's Tunnel. You can encounter enemies here, but none of them are new. Now, I struggled with giving Titan a legacy character token because he's not called Titan in the original Japanese. So this is not technically the first Final Fantasy that includes Titan, strictly speaking. Some of the braver citizens sought the source of the rot, wandering further afield until they reached the black mouth of a cavern far south of Melmond. Here are all of the treasure chests and the map for the first floor of the Earth Cave. If you just wanted to continue with the story, here is your path. But let's talk a little bit about number 2 on the left, the Hall of Giants. Every time you step in this hall, you will encounter a battle that includes giants, which is good for money and experience points. Here is the Hall of Giants according to Gamer Corner guides. Many treasure chests are going to be defended by this earth element. It doesn't attack you with any elemental attacks, just physical attacks, but earth denotes its weakness, fire. Here are the other new enemies that you will encounter on the first floor. Now let's move on to the second level of the Earth Cave. The Coral Sword is going to be a better weapon for our thief, and a new enemy encountered on this floor is the Troll. The second level is a little bit of a maze, so here is a path that can take you directly from point A to point B, level 3. Although there are 5 levels, we're going to stop at this third one. We have new enemies introduced here as well, and one of them, particularly deadly, is the Cockatrice. We will discuss why later. But if you hug the left wall all the way around, it will take you directly to the boss and our next objective. In the Earth Cave, many enemies are weak to harm and fire, and we have up to 3 levels of each. Now you might be familiar with the more modern Final Fantasy's terms of Fire, Fyra, and Firaga, or Cure, Cura, and Curaga. Those levels of elemental attacks were actually always named Fire, Fyra, and Firaga in Japan from the beginning, from this game. But those games did not come to America until Final Fantasy VIII, and then the remakes of the earlier titles have since then adopted those names in English. And it's funny, if you play Final Fantasy XIV, the Great Gubal Library hard mode makes a funny little reference to this in a document you can find on the second floor. No traps in this room. Now here is a battle to be warned about. Every one of these enemies can cause paralysis just by attacking you. The way I like to handle this is having the white mage use a strong harm spell, having the black mage use a strong fire spell, and then see who gets to act first. It is unlikely that they will paralyze both of your mages, but anything's possible. Now, I have a little gripe that I'd like to share with you. When I see videos that refer to the original Final Fantasy, even those that were made by Square themselves, they use footage from remakes, not the original NES version. And I think if we're going to talk about the history, let's show the history, not the remake. How do you like the music in this game? So far, I can't figure out whether I like it because it's nostalgic or if it's objectively good, because a lot of the songs aren't very long before they start looping. It was composed by Nobuo Uematsu, and I love almost all of his work throughout the Final Fantasy franchise. The wizards are back from the Marsh Cave, if you remember them. They hit just as hard as ever, although we are a little stronger than we were before. But take note that you still cannot run away from the wizards. We are approaching the vampire's lair, and we're going to do a quick check of our health and resources. We're going to do some prep for this fight, but it's really going to be overkill. He's a pushover. Open the door and we find Bela Lugosi waiting for us. And as you might guess, he is vulnerable to both fire and harm. Now, he can paralyze you just by attacking you or by using an ability called Dazzle. So we want to wrap this fight up quick. And we will. It won't take very long. A lot of good fast is going to do for our paralyzed fighter, but Miko hits for critical. And then Cow wraps it up. Now picture that you're playing this game for the first time in 1990, and you thought the vampire, according to the townspeople, was the reason for the Earth's decay. But that fight was way too easy. Now we find the ruby that we can take back to the Titan, but let's go through this room, and you go into the back and you see this plate. If you're observant, when you go to the subscreen, the plate will momentarily disappear. There's stairs underneath. But we're at a dead end as it is now, so we take the ruby and we head back to the Titan's tunnel. Now, as we mentioned before, in the Titan's tunnel, you will fight enemies. You will also find some treasure in the southern end of the cave. In the Pixel Remaster, the way the Titan leaves after you give him the gemstone is unnecessarily long. Here is a great axe that still isn't quite better than your silver sword, but this silver helmet is going to be the best helmet equipable by your fighter. Now our armor inventory is getting full. It's important to pay attention and to maintain space in your inventory. If we pick up one more piece of armor, we will not be able to pick up any more, which means we will be unable to obtain whatever armor we find in a treasure chest. We'll get the notification that our inventory is full, and we will leave the equipment in there. And it's not easy to fight your way through a cave to get to a chest. And if the armor is good, you're going to want to make room for it. That's why you can drop armor if needed, but on the practical side of things, you can also sell it. You hear that music? Friendly NPC cave, no enemy encounters. In the original Japanese text, this cave is called the Cave of Shame. And here is Sarda. Now Sarda indicates to us that the vampire is not the cause of the Earth's rot, and he gives us what we need in order to access the stairs beyond the metal plate. So we will leave SARDA'S cave and make our way back to the Earth Cave. We'll go back through level 1. Through the maze of level 2. And then all the way around the room in level 3. Now, as our old pal Slippy would say, I'm in some trouble here, because the cockatrices can turn you into stone just by attacking you, like the other enemies that we faced up to this point can poison or paralyze you just by attacking you. The problem is if your entire party gets turned into stone, it's game over, and stone cannot be alleviated by an inn or the clinic. At this point, it's just soft potions, or the soft spell. Shal has been turned to stone. Miko has been turned to stone. Cow has been turned to stone. Now we are in a bind. Fortunately, they don't have a lot of hit points, but one ice attack missed in the top left cockatrice. Now it's down to Omaru and one last cockatrice, 1-on-1. Cockatrice goes first, miss. Then Omaru saves the day. And he gets a big chunk of experience, which is good. It makes up for the time that he spent KO. But now we are in a pickle because we are deep into the Earth Cave and it's only Omaru. And this is on me. I only brought one soft potion because I did not anticipate a fight like this. So who am I going to use my one soft potion on? I'm going to give it to Miko, the thief. Why am I choosing the thief over the fighter or the white mage? Because the thief has double the luck, the most luck of any other character in this game. And even though the process of running from battle is bugged, luck still plays a part in running from battle. So we're going to put our thief in the second slot, which gives him the best chance to run from battle, and Miko will successfully run from every battle from here on out. We just have to survive each fight long enough for Miko to get his turn to run away from every battle, and pray that we don't run into any wizards, because you can't run from wizards in this cave. Now, the number that you want to hit to guarantee running from battles is 15 points of luck. And at this point, my fighter probably has 15 points of luck, but I'm not taking any chances. I'm going to use the character that has the most luck so that we can make it all the way out of this cave. And we do successfully make it out of the 3rd floor, all the way out to the world map. Now we can go to a cabin, we can stay at an inn in Melmond, but Shal and Cow are still stoned. So we have to go to the only place at this point in the game that sells soft potions, Elfland. And fortunately for us, Elfland has a southern dock that you can access from the Great Sea. Miko and Omaru have successfully arrived in town, bought more soft potions than we need, restored Shal and Cow, and we are back in business in the Earth Cave. Now this is the first point in the game where we don't passively use an item just by interacting with its objective. For the first time, we have to go to the menu, go to our items, and select the rod. In fact, while you're in this menu, you can see a description for every key item if you like. Here in the final 2 levels of the Earth Cave, the area has gotten darker. Here's all of the treasure chests. Notice that there is a monster guarding each treasure chest depending on where you step. And if you haven't already bought it, the silver shield is going to be a good upgrade for your fighter. A new enemy is introduced on this floor, the Sphinx, and it's very interesting. Look at the enemy design. It's massive and it has wings, denoting its high hit points and its high evasion. I just love the way they connected the way a beast looks with its stats. Now here's one path that you can take, but there are many paths. It's hard to lose your way on this floor when you're looking for the stairs that lead to the next level. Now in the final area of the Earth Cave, there's not much to see, but one wrong turn could have you wasting time. Just hug the left path like we did on the third level when hunting the vampire, and you will eventually fight the Fiend of Earth. So, in doing research in preparation for this video and this playthrough, I've come across a lot of information about the bugs in this game, and the attempts that have been made by players to fix the bugs in this game. It's a beloved title, not just among Final Fantasy fans, but retro gamers. It's really its own creature, so to speak, this original Final Fantasy. And I've seen the phrase, as it was originally intended to be. There's these bug fixes, they say, as it was originally intended to be. But honestly, and this is going to sound a little weird, I don't think we will ever know what this game was originally intended to be as far as the nuts and bolts of the game go. I don't even think the developers know what this game was intended to be. I get the feeling when I look at the bugs and I play this game that the developers noticed mid-development some of these major bugs, and rather than going back to fix them, they continued developing the game with those bugs in mind. Nothing logical about it, just a hunch on my side of things. And here we are, deeper into the cave than we have ever gone before. Deeper into any cave than we have ever gone before. I've actually gone in and out of this cave multiple times, going in for a treasure run and then coming back out, or going in and getting most of the party turned to stone and having Miko and Omaru save us. But we have finally gotten to our first of the Fiends. We're going to make sure that our party is all healed up and in good shape. But now again, picture yourself back in the early 90s playing this Final Fantasy for the first time. Up to this point in the game, we've defeated a rogue knight, we've set a town free from pirates, we've defeated the Dark Elf, which helped Elfland, and now this is a monumental battle for the story, but from the perspective of someone playing this game in the 90s for the first time, we're just helping the town of Melmond because of the rot of the earth. We've gotten indicators, but nothing overtly has suggested the significance of this fight. Now let's take a moment and talk about another bug that works in your favor. We have seen enemies that cause status effects just by attacking you. Lich does this with paralysis. However, Lich is weak to fire, and there is a bug in the game that attaches the status effect of their physical attack with the element the monster is weak to. So in essence, Lich's paralysis is a fire-based effect. To prevent this, guard yourself against the element that your opponent is weak to. The attack will still do damage, but your character will resist the status effect that accompanies that damage. Lich will always open the battle with Ice 2, so you can have your White Mage use A-Ice or Heal 2, depending on whether you think your White Mage will act before or after Lich does. I got it wrong, and Lich got in Ice 2 before Cow could get A-Ice off the ground. But as usual, we will have our Black Mage use Fast on our fighter and depend on our fighter's attacks. Lich is also weak to Fire and Harm, so Cow will heal up the party, then use Harm, while Omaru focuses on fire attacks. At least, that's the plan. A nice chunk of attack against him there. and then Fire 3, a powerful ability. Our first of the Four Fiends has been defeated. Now here is something that has never happened before. That tells you that something unprecedented has occurred. We go to our subscreen, and one of our orbs that we have been carrying since the beginning of the game is now illuminated. Now if you step up to the end of the room, you teleport out of the cave. Now the house does not fully restore your hit points, so what you want to do before using the house is expend all of your mana points on healing abilities, because the house will restore all of your mana points. In this way, we can restore both our hit points and our mana points to max, virtually staying at an inn. So again, heal up with your mana points, then use a house. You can also throw in a cabin or two, as there's a big price difference between cabins and houses. But not that big of a difference in HP restoration. Alright, we'll work our way back to Melmond to see what happens in town now that we have defeated the source of the rot. And while we're here, we're also going to do a little inventory management because we've got enough money after selling some things to buy that steel armor for the fighter. We also picked up that silver helmet, and we put the iron helmet in Kao's inventory. So we're going to sell that, and then we're going to go to Omaru's inventory and sell the iron shield. Now Xiao's inventory is full. He can't carry anymore. So we're going to buy the steel armor and give it to Kao, since her inventory has an open slot. Then we'll go into our subscreen and we will trade armors. Xiao will give the iron armor to Kao, and then Kao will give the steel armor to Xiao. Then we go back into the armor shop and sell our iron armor. This is inventory management in the original Final Fantasy. You thought you didn't have enough inventory in 14. Nobody in town really notices that we've taken out the Earth, except for Jim, the perceptive dwarf. But that's okay, because we have another town that we can visit and move ahead with the story. We have to head to Crescent Lake. Now, if you notice on the map, Crescent Lake is on the eastern border of the map, and we're on the western border. But it's closer than you think, because the world of Final Fantasy is a globe. So if we sail to the west far enough, we'll end up on the eastern side of the map. And that is something that I miss. One of the things that we lost with 3D environments ever since Final Fantasy IX was the ability to travel the entire world free of invisible walls. With 3D games nowadays, nothing ruins my immersion like coming up to an impassable wall that tells you clearly this is where the map ends. This fight is significant because when your party reaches a certain level, certain enemies that are low enough will run away. But back to the world maps. I don't know how much processing power it would take to make a nice big 3D globe that you can travel around. I'm just talking as a consumer, that it would be the most freeing to enjoy a game that way. This Crescent Lake area has a new enemy, the Pede, high in defense, but it also gives a decent amount of experience as well. Now, as far as newer titles go, I think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth handles the world map the most like the classics, which gives me hope. The shops at Crescent Lake, there's not a lot of new stuff here to offer. As far as the weapons go, maybe you would want a silver axe because its damage is a little bit better than the silver sword, but I keep the silver sword personally. For armor, the buckler is good for your thief because it's a shield. The red mage can also equip the buckler. Interestingly though, the silver gauntlets are also something that a red wizard can equip. For the item shop, we have the standard items but no soft potions, so keep in mind that Elfland is still the only place to buy soft. For the black and white shops, magic abilities are getting quite expensive. For the white mage, I like to buy Soft, Exit, and Fog 2, but on the practical side of things, you can buy a lot of soft potions for 20 grand and then use your third slot for Invis 2, which increases the party's evasion, but again, I'm not big on percentage and chance increase abilities. For the black mage, definitely get Lit 3. Rub is an instant KO, in future games it's called Death, and then Quake is another instant KO that does not work against winged or water foes. And then Stun is a Paralyze. We've experienced that many times ourselves. Now we have the opportunity to use that against other enemies. Now this is a very important town that has been significantly impacted by American localization. We have two characters in this town besides the Circle of Sages. This character here is supposed to be complaining about her husband, who is always traveling or sleeping, and this character by the tombstones is her husband. I guess they didn't want American players to see marital friction. It's interesting the things that they removed or censored back then, like the black spell rub was supposed to be death, and when you defeat enemies or they kill you, it was supposed to say dead or kill. But I don't think the localization was all bad, as it forced translators to expand their vocabulary, which I think is beneficial. A child can ask their parental figure, what does terminated mean, and what does slain mean? It's always good to expand your vocabulary, and variety is the spice of life. But now we come to a very significant point in the game. Here is where we get the big picture. And as we read what each of these sages have to say, put yourself again in the shoes of one who is playing this game in the early 90s for the first time. Up to this point in the game, we've been doing individual good deeds that affect a single town. Now we're learning about these four fiends that have an impact on the world, and we didn't even realize that we've already taken one of them out. Although we did experience an unprecedented event after we eliminated that fiend, but we may have thought we were just taking care of Melmond's problem. We didn't realize that we were taking care of 1/4 of the threat to the world. Now don't take what this guy is saying literally, it's a mistranslation. He's supposed to tell us that after we illuminate all 4 orbs, we should come back and talk to them. The next sage gives us our next objective. We have to head to the Gurgu volcano, and the sage after him will show us how to get there and help us get there. The last sage is Lucan, the one we've heard about from the beginning. But now to give us the best picture, let's go back and talk to this guy again. You may recall from the opening text of this game that the wind stops, the sea is wild, and the earth begins to rot. There's no mention of a fire-based event. It just mentions 3 maladies. There are 4 crystals in the world: earth, wind, fire, and water. And these fiends lay dormant at the base of these crystals, and they feed off the power of the crystal. This affects the elements of the world. The wind stops, the sea rages, and the earth begins to rot, because these fiends are interrupting the flow of the crystals to the earth. 400 years ago is when the trouble started, with the wind fiend awakening and beginning its path of destruction. 200 years later, she teams up with the water fiend. And then 200 years later, they're supposed to team up with the fiend of the earth, but we took him out before he could leave the altar. Now the fiend of fire was not due to awaken for another 200 years, but because we took out the earth fiend as soon as he awoke, the fiend of fire has awoken prematurely, and we have to go take care of her now. This is the big picture of Final Fantasy. And I like this style of storytelling in video games or in TV shows where you don't see the big picture right away. You just see the main characters doing their thing on a few short-term quests or short-term adventures, and then you see the big picture progressively revealed after you're into the show for a little bit. The Mandalorian is one of the shows that do that, and I like it. I would have liked to have seen a few more episodes, or maybe even an entire season of one-off episodes where the Mandalorian is just doing his bounty hunter thing, but I digress. This is not a Star Wars video. This is a Final Fantasy video. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention that now that we have the canoe, we can access a single portion of the northern continents. There's a castle that has to deal with a later quest in the game once we obtain another vehicle, and in that castle, although the ultimate prize can't be used until we get our next vehicle, there are two pieces of equipment that we can get along the way: the Zeus Gauntlet and the Heal Staff. Each of those will allow you to use an ability, Lit 2 and Heal, respectively, with no cost to MP at all. And anybody can use it, since it can go in anyone's inventory. They don't necessarily have to equip it. Now, in order to get there, we're going to start at the dock next to Crescent Lake and go south to go around the globe and then around the outside of the wing of the Northern Hawk continent. You can still access this castle early, even in the Pixel Remaster. And it's also good to note that in the Pixel Remaster, you could make things a lot easier by quadrupling the experience and gold that you get from enemies. You can also make things harder by lowering or even eliminating how much experience and gold you get from the battles.
But that's another story.
We're going to leave that castle alone for now. But as we enter the rivers with the canoe, we have a new set of enemies to encounter. And I struggled with putting the legacy icon next to the Hydra because Sildra in Final Fantasy V was named Hydra in its first official English translation, but it's really named Sildra. So I only put the legacy icon next to the Ocho, which is the predecessor for the Ochu that appears in many Final Fantasies. Now, the Hydra and the Gator attack multiple times for big damage. And with this map, we can see that there's really only two locations that have been opened up to us: a shortcut to Elfland and the Gurgu volcano. Now, we technically have access to more than just those two locations, but if you jump in the river just outside of Crescent Lake like we have, those are the only two locations you can get to. If you want to get anywhere else with the canoe, you'll have to jump on the boat. Now, I would recommend bringing 3 or 4 houses with you to the volcano so that as you come outside and recharge, you won't have to make a long trip back to town every time. As we approach the Gurgu volcano, we're going to stay at a house, and it's interesting, look at the detail. You don't enter the mountain from the bottom, because it's a volcano, you enter from the top. And that is further confirmed when we see what the first map looks like. It's the spout of a volcano, and each stairway will take us downstairs, heading towards the base. Now you're going to notice that some of the floor here is a very bright color. That's magma. And just like when you're afflicted with poison, walking on the magma will take 1 hit point every step from your entire party. Now that seems like a downside, but there is a positive side to it. You will not get into random encounters while walking on magma. So sometimes you actually save hit points by walking the path along the magma, especially with the hard hits that some of these enemies deal here. On the second floor, this is a treasure maze. You could just go straight from A to B along the south side of the screen and not bother with those treasures. And really in this game, other than things to sell, there isn't much that you would want to get up in this treasure room. Although I do like to pick up every treasure from every dungeon that I enter. Note the location of the monsters guarding the chest, and keep in mind, because of our weapon bug, the giant sword, which would be more effective against giant class enemies, doesn't do anything other than what its stats are here pictured. so I just sell that sword the next time I'm in town. And you may take a couple of trips if you want to keep your inventory clean by picking up the equipment and then heading back to town to sell before you come back. You're going to be bouncing between the 3rd and 4th levels here a bit, but on the 4th level you want to keep your eyes open for 2 important treasures, the Flame Shield and the Ice Sword. These are very powerful gear. Even though the Ice Sword doesn't contain the power of ice because of the weapon bug, it is still a stronger sword than the one we are currently using, the Silver Sword. Even when our fighter moves on to becoming a knight, the Flame Shield is a nice option for a ninja who can equip it. As we head into the base of the volcano, if you did not have a map, you could potentially waste a lot of time because there are only 2 things to interact with down here. The flame armor on the far left room, and then the boss fight with KARY, the Fiend of Fire, in the bottom left room. The flame armor, however, is protected by a nasty enemy. Here are the monsters guarding the treasure chests, and just look at that gray worm. Look at the animation, the saliva coming out of its mouth. It's disgusting. They did such a good job animating these characters. Now you can encounter these monsters randomly as well, but for the nasty ones, it's a very low % chance of running into them. The dragon-type enemies you want to be aware of have a group fire attack. Agama's isn't that bad, but the red dragon's group fire attack is a doozy. You want to try to get a fire set up ASAP. The fire elemental, just like the earth elemental, doesn't do any elemental damage. It's a heavy physical attack, but he does have a weakness to ice. Then there's the gray worm, who is also weak to ice, and just like the fire elemental, he has a big beefy physical attack and higher hit points. Here are the rest of the new enemies that we will encounter in the Gurgu volcano, and take note of the ones that will do group fire attacks. The Paralisks, like the Cockatrices, have a one-shot attack called Squint, but instead of turning you to stone, it's just death. But at this point in the game, we have a life spell for our white mage, so it may not be as ominous as it sounds. But the red gargoyles have been marked as public enemy number 1 for a reason. Oftentimes they attack in groups, and each one of them can cast Fire 2, which is big fire damage against your entire party. So if you don't get a fire rolling quickly enough, it can wipe out your team. Whenever I encounter them, I set my thief to run, my white mage to use a fire, and my black mage to use Lit 2, or maybe even Lit 3, because they are resistant to ice. And then I just hope that one of those 3 get their action before too much damage is done. Here comes our walk across the magma now. Now, have you noticed that my use of the legacy icons has been sparse? There are a lot of elements that begin in this game and carry out throughout the series. The classes, the prelude song, the theme of the crystals, 4 crystals, 4 fiends. But a lot of elements of Final Fantasy that many have come to know and love do not appear here. For instance, there are no Moogles, no Cactuars, not even Chocobos or a character named Cid. There are also no summons, or whatever you want to call them, Espers, Icons, Eidolons, Primals. In other words, no Shiva, Rama, or Ifrit. Moogles actually don't show up until Final Fantasy V. Cactuars don't show up until Final Fantasy VI. The summons show up at Final Fantasy III for the first time, and then Chocobos and a character named Cid are introduced at Final Fantasy II. Now in the remakes of this game, they shoehorn a character named Cid in there. They refer to him like an ancient scientist or something, but in the original, no Cid. Now because of walking on lava, I will go this entire room without a single random encounter. Although I have traded the convenience of no random encounters for the loss of hit points, it is time to heal up now. Now remember, I'm streamlining this video. I did go through this cave and take multiple trips in order to pick up all of the treasures, and I've gained plenty of levels along the way, but at this point we're just heading for the base of the volcano. There are only two paths that lead anywhere in this bottom area, the far left, so the western room, and then the southwestern room. Now there's two monsters that guard this treasure chest. A Gamma, which isn't really that tough of a fight. He doesn't do a lot of damage and he's vulnerable to ice, so hit him with physical attacks and this will be a rather short fight. We see that new ice sword in action. Now we're going to do a quick check of our stats and then engage with the red dragon, which is a much harder fight. And he gets preemptive as well. He hits hard and his fire attacks are also devastating, so A fire and then fast on the fighter. We're going to treat him like a boss. Colloquially speaking, he is a boss. It's always a relief when Cal can throw up that fire barrier before the enemy does their devastating fire attacks. And I kind of miss that feeling of desperation that these old games give to us. The games nowadays have become very cushy. The stakes aren't very high. At least the mainstream popular games have become very easy, and I miss when a game forced you to sweat. That feeling of risk and of losing your progress that you've spent the last hour making. Although that's the edge of a knife to walk on, sometimes it's no fun to lose an hour or more of work, and then other times the suspense and the risk is exciting. There's that fire attack he has. Now, imagine this damage without a fire on the party. And now our fighter gets to show off his new ice sword, augmented by fast. The flame armor is one of the two best pieces of armor for a ninja. But for now we're going to give it to our fighter. It gives comparable defense to the steel armor, but without as much of a penalty to the evade percentage. Now we have to fight a Gamma one more time. Every time you step on a tile with a monster guarding a treasure chest, you will fight that monster. Now we approach the Fiend of Fire, KARY. KARY was supposed to be called Merilith originally, but I think to separate themselves from Dungeons & Dragons, they renamed her KARY, at least in the American translation. You see, there's confirmation that the Fiend of Fire was not due to awaken yet, but we woke her up when we defeated the Fiend of Earth. KARY hits hard and she has group fire attacks. Keep in mind that she is resistant to both fire and ice. So we want to focus on physical attacks, and then once Omaru has Shao set up with fast, he's going to focus on lightning attacks. At least that would be what I do. I spent this fight experimenting because KARY is actually weak to certain status effects. So I tried a couple, but none of them hit. Again, I don't like abilities that only have a chance of success, even if it's a high percentage chance of success, unless it's in the 80s or 90% chance of success. But I keep trying them. And poor Miko can't catch a break. Such is the lot in life for a thief on the NES Final Fantasy. Now remember, Cow does have life, but it can't be used in battle. But Fog 2 An ability that increases our defense is definitely one of my favorites because it is not a percentage-based chance ability, it just straight up increases defense. And KARY really just ate 326 hit points worth of damage from Shao and is still standing. Now you'll see me using my last level 5 White Mage ability so that I won't have life to bring Miko back after the fight, but it's fine, because after this fight we will step above the altar and get warped outside, then we'll use a house and Kao will have enough mana points to bring Miko back, so he won't lose out on much experience besides this boss fight. The second of 4 pivotal moments in this game. We have now relieved 2 of the crystals of their afflictions. We go to our subscreen and we can see the second orb lit. And then we will begin the process of refreshing our party, including raising Miko. The enemy in the rivers named KARY, that is another word for piranha, but it also refers to the Caribbean, or a certain people that live in South America. It's the same word in Spanish. And here's a little note to keep in mind. Cabins work on the canoe. Now that the Fiend of Fire has been vanquished, we will head back to Crescent Lake and see where our quest takes us, based on the information we can get. Now you can go over to the Circle of Sages, but they don't say anything different, except for one guy who makes an interesting statement that seems out of context. Now this is more along with what he is supposed to say. I think he's referring to the power that flows from the crystals being directed to the planet instead of being obstructed by the fiends. But in order to find out where we go next, we actually talk to the gentleman who was sleeping before, the husband of the unhappy wife. There is our next destination. No longer focusing on helping individual towns, our Warriors of Light, once they get past this NPC, will now focus on saving the world.